So you're sure this is safe?
Lark presses, clutching one of my soul-infused meat rations like it's a dying child. It's not made out of a person and it's not hurting anyone?
Well, it's made out of me, I say defensively. But no, I'm not being harmed by this at all. Anima is just a substance, like meat. Some of it is people, but most of it isn't. This is made out of the same stuff I use to make mindless undead. The shambly kind that don't have any feelings at all. I think for a moment. Though I guess it's made out of the same stuff that mind controls my intelligent undead, I admit. So if it integrates with your soul, you might become my slave? Lark pauses with a look of utter horror on her face, her mouth wide open as she's about to stuff it full of ration. I smirk. Kidding, I tell her quickly. I don't think your soul can integrate that stuff anymore, it isn't all holy like before. Plus, other Vrithitso have eaten plenty of my undead without ever getting mind controlled. I don't think it's possible. She gives a hesitant, worried glance down at her meal, then back up at me, then back down at her meal. Then she stuffs it in her mouth, swallowing it whole and involuntarily making a happy noise. Apparently, by Vrithitso standards, bits of my soul taste heavenly. I'm not really sure how to feel about that, but I'm glad Lark has been enjoying it on our march home. Plus, I'm not sure it would be a good idea to control a living Vrithitso even if I could. I have no idea how my new cosmic dark mana pal would react to that, and I definitely want to keep them happy with me. It's like every wall in my house is made of instant death, but also one of the walls has the capacity to be offended. Vita, Jaleesa sighs, mind control is not an appropriate subject for humor. It's not funny, it's fucked up. I know that. I snap at her, embarrassed. I was just thinking out loud. I'm used to talking about it with people who aren't freaked out so much, is all. Like me. Kiro says cheerfully. Although I hadn't really thought much about the idea until after it happened, if I'm being honest. Why is he even still here? Jaleesa demands. We're almost back to Skyhope, and for obvious reasons they are not coming with us. You should destroy them. You should stop giving Vita orders, little human, Kiro growls. Shut the fuck up, Kiro, I snap. Jaleesa can say what she wants. And she's right that you're not coming with us? You and your girlfriend need to head for the spot I told you about and meet up with Mateo and Netta. They'll guide you to where you'll be for the foreseeable future. Oh good, the Lich is conspiring openly against us, Harvey says flatly. I mean, I like that she's open, Xavier says. He's open. They're open? Shit, how should we refer to you, Vita? Why does everyone ask me that? I groan. For the last time, I don't care. While we're in the city, that's Melik, Jaleesa corrects. And since Vita doesn't care, you should get used to he. Okay, I mean, I guess that makes sense, Xavier mutters, weirdly disappointed and vaguely miserable at that perfectly logical conclusion. God, she's like a fucking nega sky. All confused and sad instead of assholish and angry, but about more or less exactly the same things. I scowl at that, feeling myself finally start to see a connection between my recent thoughts and this area. I don't understand why everyone keeps asking me if I'm male or female, because I could not possibly give less of a shit. I do not care. But other people do. Most people do. The whole reason most people's souls feel male or female is because those people care about that. Huh, I muttered to myself. I always understood that most people recognize their gender status as part of their identity, but I feel like I didn't really get it until now. I guess I'm just the weird one again. Though I think there are some humans that, like me, don't care at all. So maybe not? Shit, now I'm going to have to start paying attention. That's so annoying. While we're on the subject, can we all just agree to refer to Xavier as a woman so she stops giving me a headache? I grumble. What? Xavier shrieks. What? Bentley asks, surprised and concerned. Vita, please stop prodding at that, Jaleesa sighs. This is one of those things people need to figure out at their own pace. Being publicly confronted about it is distressing. I'd rather deal with her distress all at once than have to deal with her constant subconscious cringing, I grumble. Then you're just being a selfish asshole, Jaleesa fires back, and you need to stop. I bristle at that, turning to glower at her from behind my helmet as both of my Vrithitsa revenants move to loom murderously. It's not just about me. I'm helping. Xavier needs to figure herself the fuck out or she'll keep being miserable. Jaleesa doesn't budge, though, and to my surprise she actually feels pretty angry. She is well and truly fed up with my shit right now, which probably means I actually did something wrong. I don't really get what, but that doesn't mean I haven't fucked up. Alright, I allow. Sorry. That gets a round of surprise from the squad, which is mildly annoying. What, do they think I can't apologize? Why are you still here, Kiro? I snap. When I said you and Ketavan need to go, I meant now. Of course, sorry, he says, babbling a little to Ketavan before the two of them start stomping off. Our march resumed in silence after that, and soon enough Skyhope's walls are in sight. Even knowing that almost everyone who wants to kill me happens to be inside, the city is still a reassuring sight. It's hard not to think of it as my home. After all, I was born and raised there. Even Melek ended up enjoying his time living in the city, though he would have grumpily refused to admit it. It's a shame that I will almost certainly be returning to my village after Hiverrock night, but even if I wasn't likely to have my identity revealed I would feel obligated to go make sure everyone there is safe after the attack. We return to the barracks and take a moment to relax, the whole squad subdued despite our victory. I don't have long to rest, though, since I feel Orville's soul in the city and I need to go talk to him about Penelope. Ignoring my body's exhaustion, I trudge my way to the Hunters Guild shortly after taking a quick bath and getting some civilian clothes on. Orville is in his room, which is upstairs and therefore not a place the general public is supposed to go, but I just walk up there like I belong and no one bothers to stop me. One knock on the door later, and a very unamused Orville invites me into his room. They haven't seen Penelope, he tells me flatly. I scowl. That doesn't sound good. Elaborate, I order. Netta and Matteo both report that they haven't seen Penelope, that the village hasn't seen Penelope, and that none of the people normally in contact with Penelope know where she is. However, someone named Nugas is missing, and they think Vita's mother might know where Penelope is. Which mother, exactly? I ask. Orville's only outward sign of surprise is a short pause. I assume they meant Lynn, but I don't personally know any other mothers, he says. That does make the most sense, since Altrix is almost certainly in the village and would have reported. It's annoying, though, because just like before I don't have a good reason to visit Lynn without being suspicious. Is there any way you can talk to her about it without arousing suspicion? I ask Orville. Maybe during or after Hiverrock night? He hedges. I haven't really interacted much with Vita's family, but I do see them from time to time. I scowl at that, but I don't have a better idea. This is terrible news and not at all what I expected. Penelope is in trouble. I don't know what trouble, but there's no way she wouldn't have checked in with her allies unless she was unable to. Orville is right, though, in that dealing with Hiverrock night has to come first. That's tonight, after all, and my family still lives here. Penelope managed over a month without my help. She's either already dead or she can handle one more day. She'd want me to focus on the city first anyway. I nod and depart, trying to decide what to do next. What I'm supposed to be doing is resting, since we just marched across the island for a 10-day and in about 5 hours we're going to be fighting for our lives against Hiverrock. But I couldn't sleep even if I wanted to, as shortly before we made it back to the city I finished scarfing down the remains of the white, not to mention the souls of whatever monsters we ended up killing along the way. Since I have to fight as Melek, I'd like to join the preparatory work and start casting a bunch of defensive runes around the city, but the mandatory lockdown won't start for another couple hours and any runes Melek makes would naturally degrade before Hiverrock gets here if I made them now. So I guess I'll try to rest after all. I'm a little sore, and my body is yearning to use some of this energy on biomantic improvements anyway. I probably won't be able to get much done on that front without hatching, but some is better than none. So I head back to my room in the barracks and hop onto the bed to rest, Harvey openly glowering at me when I enter the room. I ignore him, though, closing my eyes and focusing on my ocean. My mana is placid until I bother to move it, but then it's just like moving any other part of me. Throwing my senses around, I see that the black mana remains as immobile as it was before our encounter, unmoving and uninterested in anything around it. Well, since I have nothing better to do, maybe I can ask it to chat. I take a single iota of my own mana,
the smallest amount of myself that I can physically move at once, and I press it into the black mana. The 2 points of power annihilate, though they are both so impossibly small I'll be surprised if the void even notices it happens. More than notice, however, it immediately jolts to attention, oozing panic and aggressiveness for a terrifying instant before it seems to recognize me. I shape a small part of myself next to our border into something like a hand, and wave hello. Amusement, the mana conveys. Reciprocation. Query. It's greeting me back. Now how to answer it? I can't exactly just say I got bored and wanted to figure out your deal. Actually, wait. Can I? I form myself into the shape of words. Can you read this? Recognition. Excitement. Confusion. To my surprise, the black mana starts to twist back at me, forming what looks like words of its own. Except, I can't read any of it. It doesn't look like any language I've ever seen before. Incomprehension, I send back. It twists into more words. Another language I don't know. Incomprehension, I repeat. Futility. I only know one language. If the black mana doesn't understand it, I can't understand anything else it could write. But it is extremely cool that it understands language at all. It has to be manifested physically in some way, right? Can it see through the eyes of the Vrithitso? Does it know what they know after all? No, if it could it should be able to read the language I wrote, since Lark can read it. Disappointment. Hope. Interest. Yeah, it concurs with me. It's a shame we can't communicate with words, but it's very cool that we're both capable of it. One of us just has to learn the language of the other. As if thinking the same thing, the black mana shapes part of itself into the image of what appears to be a tree, and below that it writes a word. I copy the image, but put the word for tree in my own language below it. And in this way, we start to share. Melik. Something very far away calls out. Distantly, I realize I am being shaken. I project annoyance and a farewell to the black mana, thanking it for its time as I open my physical eyes to glower at Harvey. What? I snap at him. It's time for you to start preparing defensive countermeasures, he tells me. Go get in uniform. I suppress my urge to sigh and get up to do just that, reporting to a temporary commander in charge of the preemptive defenses. Hiverok looms ever larger in the distance, which captures most of my attention as I blithely obey orders on which runes to put where. I'd never really thought about it before, but Hiverok only flies a couple miles above us, doesn't it? I'll probably be able to feel the lower parts of it with my soul sense. I wonder what that's going to be like. I really wish they would just leave us all alone. I wish I could make them. Maybe if I could get up there somehow, I could. To kill from above wasn't that tough. Eyes on your runework, Templar, the captain whose name I haven't bothered to remember snaps at me. Plenty of time for looking up when they're all falling from the sky. Yeah, I agree. I mean, yes sir, apologies. I moved to Skyhope pretty recently, is all. How bad has it been here for the past couple years? It's weird how talking about Melik's life as if it's mine doesn't feel like lying. But I have been in prison the last couple years, which means I've missed all the Hiverok nights during that time. It'd be nice to know what to expect. It's been steadily getting worse, the captain admits. They've been dropping more eggs and more troops, their own people dying by the thousands. It feels like they're getting desperate. Which just makes them more dangerous, I conclude, twisting my metal dust to finish another couple runes. Exactly, the captain says approvingly. The High Templars do their best, but a lot of bugs tend to make landfall regardless while they deal with the boulders. Expect fighting in the streets. An annoyingly perfect opportunity to make myself a loyal Hiverok soldier army, wasted by having to pretend to be Melik. Oh well. I'll be ready, sir, I say. Where are we putting traps next? Up through Hiverok's penumbra darkening the skies, I'm laying down deadly wards. At that point, however, I'm ordered back to my squad for general combat, so I head to where we're assigned to protect. The others are already there, and Jaleesa gives me a brief nod of acknowledgement before immediately getting into a conversation about our strategy. For obvious, Xavier-related reasons, our squad is assigned to defend the area around one of the city's major wells. Our strategy is, ironically, quite similar to the strategy the squad employed against me. My runes plus Xavier's ability to move and shape massive amounts of water mean we can put up impromptu ice walls, isolating groups of enemies in kill zones as they try to travel through the streets. Jaleesa coordinates it all, letting us activate our traps with perfect timing even if we don't have line of sight to the enemy. Which, of course, I could do without her help, but I am currently pretending I can't. Finally, when the enemy is isolated, Lark can hop into the death cage and fucking annihilate them. Annoyingly, the area we're protecting is one of the richer ones, which means that there's designated underground shelters for everyone and civilians won't be hiding in their homes. That's good news in terms of Harvey's ability to collapse structures in a pinch, but terrible news in terms of my mood. I knew the Templars didn't protect the poorer parts of the city as well as the richer parts, but it's pissing me off to be part of that. I guess I can't deny it fits our squad's tactics a lot better to be around the more bountiful well and the stone buildings, but still. We prepare our area, and now it's finally time to start the worst part of Hiverock Night, the waiting. The initial wave is handled by the High Templars, and the rest of us just deal with whatever it is they miss. Except me, I suppose. I can gather intelligence. Hiverock is about to enter my sensory range, I whisper to Jaleesa. On the far edge of the island, the invasion is already starting. Traditionally, Hiverock used to drop troops in remote places, presumably to establish a foothold, but we usually ignored them as they tended to simply die in the forest without our intervention. But now, eggs are dropped. The Vrithitso have proven their ability to withstand the forest, to thrive in it, and so the problem will only keep getting worse the longer we fail to strike back against their source. Tall and looming, a craggy cylinder of stone, the island of our decades-long enemy floats with countless bugmen just like to kill crawling along the stony bottom, heedless of the fall. It teaches us only something we already knew about their people: they do not hesitate in the face of death. Learn what you can, Jaleesa agrees. I nod, and as Hiverock approaches I feel upwards through the depths of their stone to look into their souls. Numerous. That's my first impression. The lower levels of Hiverock are packed with thousands upon thousands of Vrithitso souls, most of them raw and unhatched. I'm a bit annoyed that the mouths of the Black Mana are being used against us, but I have no way to know if that's something the Black Mana wants, since it doesn't seem to perceive through the Vrithitso connected to it. Either way, it doesn't stop at the eggs. Hatched Vrithitso are also kept together by the dozens, fighting and devouring each other inside of what seems to be deep pits packed so tightly that they all fight while squirming over top each other. I sense hundreds of them like this, and not all of them are totally mindless. I shudder at the thought of being born into that. At least the poor things don't seem to survive long. The last kind of chamber houses a singular, massive Vrithitso, often full of ore resting next to eggs, some of which are being delivered to empty pits by the Hiverock soldiers. They're farming them, I whisper quietly. They're farming Vrithitso to use as weapons. Jaleesa swallows and nods slightly, but doesn't answer. We'd already guessed that, but it's still an uncomfortable confirmation. I return my attention above to try and figure out more of the story, since the Vrithitso aren't really the interesting ones in this situation. The farmers are far more important than their crops. The souls of the people of Hiverock are all familiar, of course. They match to kill from above's rose-like pattern of winding beauty, each unique and complex but following similar patterns. The people of Hiverock all have similar souls in the same way humans all have similar souls, and though there seems to be less obvious variance, there's clearly still variance. They are individuals, they are people. Their emotions are difficult to read, but from what little practice I have I can make out quite the array of moods. What's interesting, however, is how nearly all of them feel. I'm not sure how to describe it. Content? To kill from above never felt this way, perhaps due to being so far from home, but the people of Hiverock are all weirdly happy about, well, whatever it is they happen to be doing. It's sort of like how my revenants feel when they're following orders, which is somewhat of an uncomfortable comparison. The people of Hiverock are very much alive, of course, but that means little. If we're fighting a mind-controlled army, or even an entire mind-controlled society, what does that mean? I shudder a little. It's not the only explanation, of course. The feeling I'm picking up on is similar to my revenants, but even with my limited ability to discern Hiverock person emotions I'm pretty sure it's far from exactly the same. These guys are weird bug people, after all. Maybe they're just more naturally content and loyal than humans are. Bugs are known for being weirdly capable at cooperation, right? I wrinkle my nose with frustration. If it's bug-like cooperation, shouldn't there be a queen or something? I guess there might be. I only feel the lowest sections of Hiver Rock, the vast majority of it extending high above my sensory range. If not for the fact that the island is hollow and the denizens have colonized the inside all the way down to the bottom, I wouldn't be able to feel them at all. As is, the movement of souls in the lower areas indicates busy hallways and chambers, all packed with warriors. Content or otherwise, the sheer soul density of Hiver Rock extends to the bugs just as much as the Vrithitso. The caverns are stuffed full of people, obscenely crowded to the point of congestion. At the very bottom, what I suspect are chambers full of warriors preparing to drop on us hold so many soldiers I'm surprised they can even breathe. The stones are loaded and ready to drop. There's a tension up there, one that mirrors the one down here. A ripple goes through their ranks as the order travels by what I assume is word of mouth. They're dropping, I announce quietly, and Hiver Rock night begins. I didn't expect them to be scared. It's largely drowned out by the fervor, the anticipation, the various ways people psych themselves up for battle. But it's there. The fear is lesser than I'd expect from people being sent on what has always been a suicide mission for their people, but it's still there. I don't know why that bothers me so much. The stupid bugs are putting the people I care about in danger, so they're all going to die. The rocks fall first, and the High Templars burst into action. It's nothing I haven't seen before, of course. The perception event was far more terrifying than this, and they handled it. Even without Arden the Iron Soul helping this time, I don't think any rocks are making it to the ground. Nothing I can do about them anyway. My eyes are on the Templars themselves, that ubiquitous maelstrom of annihilation. Braum, Cassia, and Galdra swoop through the skies, reducing boulders larger than houses to ash and dust. It's so horribly familiar. Here I am, helping save the city from an extant threat, fighting on their side. Just like last time. Just like the moments before I was captured. Will it happen again? Will I be able to escape this time? Why is it so hard, I whisper, to do the right thing and not be punished for it? I'm not quite quiet enough. The words weren't intended for anyone else, but Jaleesa and Lark both catch them, each reacting in a uniquely unpleasant way. Pity and regret, the classic Jaleesa special. I don't want to feel either of them from her. And little baby Lark, always so obsessed with her self-flagellations that she's barely just starting to figure out that the world isn't fair. I shouldn't be focusing on this. I'm just tense, and why wouldn't I be? Here come the bugs. Most of them die to the High Templars, of course. None of them are stupid enough to think that won't be their fate. But ultimately, when the choice is between letting a contingent of soldiers touch the ground and letting a building-sized stone impact the city after accelerating from a 2-mile drop, well, some of them inevitably slip through. That's when it's our turn to slaughter them. They are equipped with parachutes, but they open them as late as possible, aiming to land on us weapon first and at high speed. They are not, I have to note, very good at it. Their souls are full of a confidence of knowledge, a certainty that this is within their power, but their bodies move with the sluggishness of unpracticed movement. They remind me of my own struggles to handle Melik's weak body. Which is strange. I don't think they're like me. I don't think they're older than their physical forms. I don't really have time to analyze it, though, before I have to focus on the killing. I'm used to killing, now. I'm not sure when that started, but it's clearly my new normal. The unexpected melancholy I felt at the complexity of the Hiver Rock people does nothing to slow my sword or stay my spells. More and more fall on us, dying to traps and tactics and blades and bombs. They are relentless, but not particularly strong. There's a reason we have repelled them time and time again, and while we won't be without casualties, I don't particularly feel like we're in danger of losing either. Hiver Rock eventually runs out of stones, and funnily enough that means more soldiers start making landfall. Not because the High Templars can't stop them, but because they're now splitting their attention between the air and ground, mopping up whatever soldiers are starting to make headway. They're tiring, as well. We all are, as the minutes pass into hours. But I managed to sneak a few soldier snacks in while I'm sure no one is looking, so my body keeps going. Now, however, I have no such luxury. Galdra is too close, since we're currently being swarmed by bugs despite our traps. Everyone but Lark and I are injured, and our body's conditions are simply because of our healing abilities, not any superior skill at combat. It is tedious and slow, and without Galdra here one or more of us likely would have died. Lady Vesuvius picked a terrible time to go missing, I grouse, mostly to myself. Couldn't her talent kill thousands of them at once without spreading to us? Once again, I'm louder than I intend. The whole squad reacts to my mention of Penelope in various ways, from Lark's worried confidence that the woman is no traitor, which is amusing, to Jaleesa's mental chastisement that Melik wouldn't calmly complain in the middle of a life-or-death fight, which I have to admit is valid criticism. It's Galdra's reaction, though, that makes me do a bit of a double take. It's strange. First she mentally acknowledges a good idea, which is pretty normal. But her thoughts afterwards are tinged with plotting, intent, and command. Not to mention that all too familiar joy of ordering someone around. Of ordering Penelope around? Of using her as a puppet. My heart beats a little faster and I feel something foul flare up inside me. No, I could just be misreading things. I'm wrong, surely. Let me be wrong. I'm not sure what I'll do if I'm right. Animancer, I say out loud, apropos of nothing, and feel out Galdra's reaction to the word. Surprise. A bit of fear. Acknowledgement, recognition. Suspicion, directed at me. I have no room in my mind to care, however, because I feel one emotion particularly strongly from her, self-identification. Galdra is an Animancer. Galdra has Penelope. The shell over my soul cracks, and my rage spills across the battlefield. The Hiverock soldiers around us stagger, each and every one of them tasting the fear of my proximity for the first time. A dozen of them die in that startled moment as my squad presses the sudden advantage, but I have no eyes for it. My tendrils burst from my core, stretching euphorically as they twist around my limbs to support Melik's inferior flesh. I jump directly at Galdra. I am going to fucking kill her, and I don't give a damn about a single other thing. There you are, Galdra hisses, grinning behind her helmet as mana erupts around me. Let's see if I can get you for good this time. I don't respond. I'm too busy screaming in rage, reaching for her soul. A pulse of myself out into the world destroys her spells, but only for a moment, and I see that I am clearly on a trajectory to be incinerated. Not that it matters. This body doesn't matter. Only her death. And as long as I can reach her with a tentacle, I find my soul brushing against her skin and failing to penetrate. Right. She's an Animancer now. She can see me. She can touch me. And when my body burns, she'll be ready. Mana erupts all around Galdra. I won't be able to stop it this time. I'm headed right towards my death. Whose body do I take? The spell surrounding Galdra completes, but in the Mana's place is, to my utter surprise, a blazing red, craggy-souled monster, her tail wrapped around Galdra's head. A single twitch of muscle, and Galdra's brains splatter across the street. Her corpse falls to the ground, headless and dead, as I land beside it. Viscera coats the monster's tail, small appendages on the underside holding and wiping gore off the crushed metal that was once part of the High Templar's skull. What the fuck just happened? The Crimson Beast caresses Galdra's soul with one hand before flicking it contemptuously in my direction, her cold eyes and hardened soul full of judgment. Reanimate that, she orders, and I know that voice. We'll still need her for the fight. I catch the soul numbly, staring up at a face that's horribly familiar other than the scales. No. It can't be. What did she do to you? I ask, horror creeping into my tone. Petty things, what's left of Penelope answers. I swallow. What did you do to yourself? I've finally hatched once again, but Penelope has grown herself a shell. The spikes have grown all around her softness, suffocating it. Something impenetrable now stands between her cavernous, broken interior and her actions. She is horribly maimed, yet she wears the scab-like armor. It takes to look at. I want to cry. But Penelope, or whoever this is, she just smiles at me. Anyone else would be referring to my body, she muses. But you see nothing wrong physically. I remember why you were easy to love. Her body? Why would anyone? Penelope wanted to be like this. I remember her talking about it. Why would that be the issue here? I could not care any less about the fact that she's a giant naked dragon lady that just crushed a skull in a very... It's, well. Damn it, Melik's body, keep your gross instincts out of this. None of that matters. She's barely even herself. She doesn't even love me anymore. I'm still stunned and reeling, unable to react at all, when Lark launches herself up at what was once my girlfriend, screaming accusations of murder. Murderer. The young little Vrathitsa roars at me, launching herself through the air towards me in a manner I note is not dissimilar to how Vita nearly killed herself by leaping at Galdra. Loyal to a fault, the both of them. Loyalty is a virtue, not a fault. Of course, loyalty is a virtue and not a fault. It is observably beneficial to all parties, and not deserving of mockery. No, the flaws in this situation come from other factors. Lark is arguably not incorrect in her accusations, after all. I have just performed murder and assassination of a true lady, while by law her head is quite crushable due to her status as an animancer. I have not yet proved her status as an animancer under a court of law. I am a murderer until I do so, at which point that status is retroactively revoked and officially never existed. All of this is, of course, silly and subjective and pointless, but it's still how things are. Fortunately, my principles trump law. This fact was often abused by my old self as justification, and so will need to be constantly monitored and adjusted for, but it is still a fact. Anything less would be prohibitively restrictive. The point is, as Lark chips her sword against my scales, I find my principles and my plans in alignment. She is not to be hurt for this. She is acting in accordance with rightness, at least in terms of the information she has available. She is to be handled non-lethally and made into an ally. I catch her by the throat. Galdra the Annihilator was I start to explain, but she drowns it out with incoherent fury and twists violently in my grasp, forcing me to throw her towards the ground to prevent her from snapping her own neck. My wings rotate and stretch as my arcane flight organ throbs with mana, increasing my altitude in an attempt to prevent her from simply jumping back up at me. Yet before she ever hits the ground, she shatters her own gauntlets and fires threads at me from the spinnerets on her fingers, yanking them when they stick to me. Our difference in weight means she gets pulled up to me rather than pulling me down, continuing our battle in the sky with claws out. She crashes into me like a furious beast, roaring and scratching and struggling in maddened grief. But not frenzy. She is still herself. So the time has come to break her. She grabs one of my wings and tugs, but I do not truly need them to fly. So I take the opportunity to grab her helmet and yank it off hard enough to break the straps. This frees one of her most dangerous weapons, of course, but it is worth being able to judge her expression. She was a good woman. Lark shrieks at me, and I let the temptation to murder her for those words pass over me like a wave at the top of a pond. She's crying. She's hysterical. She doesn't know. I will tolerate this. The desirability of outcomes is not determined by how satisfying they are. Lark, listen to me, I order her, resisting the urge to wince as one of her wild kicks strikes me between the legs. Shut up. It seems I will need to take a more expedient approach. There is, after all, still a battle happening around us. I am First Lady Penelope Vesuvius, and you will listen to me, I hiss, clamping both hands around her skull and squeezing just painfully enough to remind her exactly what I did to the last skull I got a grip on. Bafflingly, she continues trying to strike at me, causing us to tumble inelegantly through the air but accomplishing little else. Oh, right. I forgot the girl was suicidal. I shake her with dangerous force, but unfortunately her Vrathitsa constitution cares little for trivial things such as concussions. She cared. Lark shouts, tears streaming down her face. She believed in me. Watcher's eyes, I do not have time for this inane, childish whinging. I stick my thumb as deep into her mouth as it will go. Am I a monster or woman to you, Lark? She freezes, finally recognizing me, so I suppose the answer is woman. That probably makes her and Vita the only two in the city. Well, at least until Nugas gets here. I'd wondered, while forming my body, if it was wise to keep my face. It is at least paying dividends here. Galdra always stood right by Lark, for all her horridness. But so did I. Only a fool wouldn't believe in you, I say firmly, since she's finally listening and it's what she needs to hear. Now, you have my condolences for losing someone close to you. But Galdra was an animancer using me as a mind slave, and I will not tolerate any more arguments about whether she should have lived. There is a battle going on and you are going to fight it as a Templar. Am I understood? She would never, she sobs carefully, not letting her teeth draw blood. If I am a liar then seek justice later, I snap, cutting her off. You will fight our enemy. Am I understood? She nods slowly. Good, I say, and drop her. She cuts the threads binding us on her way to the ground. She is still crying, still confused, still not sure what to believe. It will do for now. I've already wasted too much time on her. I did, after all, just assassinate a major political and military figure in the middle of a battle with one of our greatest enemies, and Lark is not the only person I'm going to need to convince not to kill me as a result. The rest of her squad is thankfully too occupied with Hyvarrock soldiers to attack me, although several of them clearly want to. The vast majority of other Templar squads haven't even noticed my arrival, as they are busy for exactly the same reasons. But there is one major threat who has undoubtedly both noticed and declined to ignore, and as always he is, in essence, already here. The illusory strike takes me in the back of the head. I'm ready for it, but it still sends me careening through the air in a quite undignified manner. Of course, the common rules of dignity do not apply to me. I am a masterwork of biological superiority. Arrogance is nothing but a weakness. I am a creature crafted to the best of my limited abilities, and more relevantly I am still completely naked. One does not get to complain about a lack of dignity while flying around with their genitals out. Hypocrisy is a symptom of failure. Contradictions do not arise in a properly working system. I cease my uncontrolled movement through the skies, stabilizing my momentum with a burst of magical thrust and a flick of my enormous tail. Brahm's manifested body flies at me with fist ready to swing, which has always struck me as odd. Why not simply batter me without the accompanying visual illusion? It should not only be possible, but easier. Prioritization is first priority. One must always know what to be focused on, and remain focused on it. I ask for Pali, Brahm the ubiquitous, I say, and though I'm struck multiple times during my words I continue to speak them. I mean you and yours no harm. The blows stop, and I stabilize my flight once again. The expressionless illusory helmet of Brahm the ubiquitous betrays nothing, but I believe I have his measure. It seems to me you have already harmed me and mine, Vesuvius the inhuman, Brahm says, and I can't help but let a little smile touch my face as he speaks the title I have now fully embraced. He is furious and means it as an insult. It is not one. Galdra was a traitor, I tell him. An animancer. She bent me to her will. I seek only justice for Skyhope and my own soul. Justice for Skyhope, he repeats. Did you not destroy the Inquisition? My body did, I confirm, and allow him to draw his own conclusions from the vague words. A mistake, I soon decide. Brahm is not a man that likes vagueness. He equates it with duplicity. Annoying, since under the circumstances he is correct to do so. You claim Galdra forced you under her influence, and yet you killed her? Brahm challenges. That is hardly an unprecedented situation, I remind him. For another animancer, perhaps, he accuses. I've already misstepped once, and truthfully there is not much point in denying that here lies a fragile tools, prone to constructing fragile things. It is better to spin the truth more favorably. One does what they have to in order to live, I say, sadness and regret in my tone. I sinned in your eyes, but I have done so to save you. Slaying the strongest living Templar in our time of need is your idea of saving us? Brahm asks, gesturing around. His mistake. Momentum in the negotiation for my life is once again mine. You will find that I have supplied an ample replacement for this loss, I tell him, just as the first of the Hyvarrock soldiers start to collapse. I have, of course, been seeding custom diseases since I arrived here. The last time I slew an army this way, I had to take many precautions against the spread of my deadly concoctions. That does not apply here. Hyvarrock denizens have incredibly robust and complicated immune systems, such that my prior attempts to slay them en masse have been met largely with frustration. Now, however, I have had plenty of time to be around the Hyvarrock soldier at Vita's camp, and my talent's instincts have come up with countless methods of potentially bypassing their natural immunities, all of which will do absolutely nothing to humans. The biologies involved are simply too different. Humans can be carriers of my Hyvarrock-slaying plagues, but they cannot be harmed by them. Which is, of course, the ideal outcome. The vast majority of my diseases fail. I haven't been able to test them before, after all, as I didn't want to alert to Kill of my intentions lest he have a way of secretly reporting to his superiors. This kind of underhanded plague formation tactic rather grates my principles, but the preparation was done before I bound myself more firmly to them, and now that the plagues existed it is wasteful not to use them. My principles surrounding my talent are, by necessity, particularly rigid, as the temptation to skirt around them has always been particularly strong. A plague that infects sapients may never be self-propagating. No plague may be capable of existing past the maximum necessary generations of replication. Plagues must self-destruct upon mutation. And the list goes on, with each and every restriction making my power weaker and more frustrating to use. My diseases are, by necessity, fragile, and it grates me. They need not be so. Yet these are some of my oldest principles, and without many of them my country would be quite barren, and I would be quite mad. They must never be broken. And now they never will be. Besides, fragile or otherwise, my weapons are still enough to kill. The Hiverok soldiers in town perish en masse as I identify the successful strain out of the dozens of failed ones and redouble my efforts to spread it. The tide falling on us starts to die before even hitting the ground. You expect your heroics to pardon your sin, Braum says. And perhaps they will. Together, your accusation and contribution are serious enough to stay my hand. But you are both a killer and an animancer, and you cannot expect to return to your former status, even if the investigation into your claims falls in your favor. I blink with disappointment, but not surprise. My status is an irrelevant thing, I tell him plainly. We are no longer playing the game. I intend to attack Hiverok directly. I will spread my plague through their home and end them once and for all. Will you and Cassia provide support? There is a reason we never do this, Braum says, his false body betraying no surprise. Hiverok's defenses greatly outstrip their offenses. Attacking will provoke them, and you are unlikely to survive it. I suppose breaking and rebuilding my soul has not reduced my dislike for people who state the obvious. This likelihood has been accounted for and deemed acceptable, I say out loud. I don't intend to die, but stopping the Hiverok attacks for good is something worth dying for. I can believe in things worth dying for, now. Not in my heart, but at least in my soul. Wait. Vita says, halving slightly from running all the way over to where Braum launched me. I'm coming too. Obviously, I answer. I need her to control Galdra and provide her own strength. I'm pleased to see her volunteer, though. It is the right thing to do, and much more convenient than having to force her. Young Melik. Braum starts to protest. You can't. He cuts himself off, though, just now realizing the obvious. You aren't Melik, he concludes. Most people can't really see her, of course. They just see a normal Templar and not the glorious cerulean soul, the impossibly moving tendrils, the threads of anima rapidly spreading through her body. So she removes her helmet, shaking out her head before staring up at us with a young man's face. Her eyes are already turning a deep, deep blue. Turns out it's hard to kill a lich, she deadpans. So are you actually going to let me help this time, or are we going to throw down in the middle of a crisis again? Braum regards her passively for a moment. Was it you, he asks slowly, when we met in the tavern? Yes, Vita confirms. In the fullness of your power? He presses. Could you have killed Cassia while she was drunk and defenseless? All I would have had to do is shake her hand, Vita confirms. And why didn't you? She sighs and puts the helmet back on. Being good at killing people, she tells him, is not the same as wanting to do it. Don't you know that firsthand? Braum looks up, although the motion is, of course, a purely symbolic gesture. Hiverok will not take Skyhope, he says. Even if I turn and face you, even if I try to kill you both during this crisis, we will still win. At least today. But in the long run, we have already lost, haven't we? The report from New Tilesea was grim. Vrathitsu of that size will eventually spread across our kingdom faster than we can deploy Templars to stop them, and they will keep getting stronger while we dwindle away and die. I smile. And so an offensive is the only option, I finish for him. You understand. It is not authorized by command, Braum hedges. Frustrating. Weak. Principle is a superior master to man. Is command what dictates your action? I ask him. Or is it what you know to be right?
I cannot go, Braum says.
But I will not stop you. And then he vanishes, although I doubt he has stopped watching. Not a bad outcome, all things considered. I give him about a 70% chance to back us up at the last minute anyway. Well, Vesuvius, a once-loved voice sneers at me from every direction. You've signed me up for quite an outing. I turn to face Galdra's headless corpse as it floats towards me, slow clapping mockingly. I guess I deserve to go out the same way you did, she continues, a chinemancy spell speaking in lieu of a mouth. Slathered and dripping in my own arrogance. I really thought I had you. How'd you trick the animancy? I turn away from Galdra, and back to Vita. Shall I carry you or Lark? Galdra can carry the other. Is Lark coming? Lark. I bark at her. Do you wish to stop the murderous ambitions of the people who use your kind as weapons? No, it's cool, Galdra grunts. Just ignore me. I'm not that important. You're not that important, Vita confirms, making the words law. I would have enjoyed that before, but I find pride in the fact that I don't any longer. Galdra's fury is obvious even without a face as she feels the words settle into her soul. Fuck you, she hisses. Vesuvius got out. What makes you think I can't? You will never use animancy again under any circumstances, even if you think it will benefit me, Vita orders her. You will answer any questions I ask you to the degree of detail you genuinely believe I desire. You will immediately inform me if you ever think of a plan to escape my control, or suspect you might be escaping my control intentionally or otherwise. Have I missed anything? There's a pause. Nothing comes to mind at the moment, Galdra intones evenly. And that's what makes me think you won't get out, Vita snaps. I'm not a fucking cognomancer trying to tiptoe my animac constructs around the limitations of the brain. You are dead. And that means I own you. Come on, Lark. What'll it be? Galdra's corpse or Galdra's murderer? I'm not going to go up there and kill people in their own homes. Lark squeaks. Defending Skyhope is one thing, but still incapable of seeing the bigger picture, isn't she? She's probably having a terrible time for more reasons than just Galdra and I, come to think of it. She's been killing people. She has killed people despite her conscience for what may be the first time. They're Hyvarok soldiers, sure, and she killed them with sword rather than fangs, but this is still something she will remember and likely regret forever. I open my mouth to try to soothe her, but Vita beats me to it. You won't have to kill anyone if you come with us, Vita grunts. There are hundreds of Rathitso up there that need killing instead. We can drop you with them. Hundreds, really? Well, Vita is no liar, so I will take the number at face value. It is a frightening amount. Why would ask? Their defenses purportedly outstrip their offenses by several orders of magnitude. Their attacks, while increasingly risky, seem to only use a bare fraction of their actual power. The power, therefore, is being saved for something. Their resources, manpower and otherwise, are allocated with uncaring precision. Verdantop must be far from the only island they are invading. We are merely part of a schedule. Arrogance is nothing but a weakness. But I suppose we'll soon see how warranted that arrogance is. Is that really Galdra? Lark asks quietly, referring to the headless corpse of the enemy. Is she still herself? Is that really how it works? Vita regards both of them quietly for a moment, which is a surprise as I expected an immediate answer. She is as much Galdra as I am me, my former lover answers calmly. If not more. I'll go with Galdra, then. Vita nods. Galdra, you will answer anything Lark asks you truthfully and completely, to the degree of detail you believe she desires. Goody, Galdra sighs. Her capacity to emote with spells alone is rather impressive. She is much more appealing to look at without a face. Without the metal that was in my head I'm much weaker than usual, Galdra complains, lifting Lark up onto her back. And considering how Vesuvius spent it, it's useless now. Not entirely, I disagree, and toss it to Vita. She grins and tries to bite it, then hurts her teeth. Ow! Man, fuck Melik's body. She tosses the metal back to me. Turn this into bite-sized chunks, would you? Of course, I agree, and start snapping pieces off of it with my bare hands. Would you be willing to supply me your mana for the journey upwards, Vita? It is much more efficient, and it will allow me to continue casting even if you have to disrupt other spells around us.
Yeah, Vita says. Okay. The poor thing is distraught. The loss of my love for her hurts her greatly. Alas, I am incapable of mourning it. I remember all too well the efforts I put myself through to win her affections, and still she was slow and timid and quite closed off until after 2 years of absence. She did not truly love me until I brought the island down for her, but I bloody well did it anyway. If she can handle the role reversal and put in the work to win me back, well, we shall see what my new soul makes of her. It would be nice to get close to love again, even if I still don't think I'll be able to truly experience it. It is not unappealing to have a happy obsession. Shall we go up to our likely deaths, then? I asked kindly, extending a hand down to Vita. I look forward to destroying our greatest enemy and still not being thanked for it, Vita answers dryly, taking my hand and allowing me to lift her into a chaste hold. With a flex of wing and magic, we shoot up like an arrow. So, I say, deciding to make small talk as I dodge falling bugmen trying to intercept us. You died. Vita pops a chunk of metal in her mouth and swallows it whole. So did you, she points out. Yes, I agree. Arguably so. Our plan didn't work so well, she notes. It could have gone much worse, I disagree. From your perspective, she asks slowly, are you still you? Or are you more like Nugas? Even Nugas is not like I expected Nugas to be, I muse. So that is a difficult question to answer. But I will say that I believe myself to be Penelope Vesuvius. At least to the same extent that you are you and Galdra is Galdra. I still bear the sins and the dreams of the woman that came before. Is that what we are? Vita grumbles, turning her eyes up at one of the great collections of runes flaring to life on the craggy underside of Hiver Rock. Just sins and dreams? We are both different from who we were before, I say. I do not undermine this. But all people, all the time, are becoming different. And there is nothing any of us can do about it. Penelope Vesuvius, like any person, is a creature composed of random chance. I did not choose to be born a noble. I did not choose to have a talent designed to instill death and suffering. And I did not choose to have the philosophy of principle before emotion drilled into me at a young age. But all of these things happened, and they all define who I am. I chose many things, of course. I chose to be a hunter. I chose to pursue animancy. And I chose you. These things define me as well. But I feel as though we ignore the importance of the way everything we didn't choose defines us. We do not get the option of remaining the same person for our entire life. The world chooses for us. What I had to do to myself was terrifying, Vita, but I am not so sure it is that much more terrifying than the natural progression of life. In the end, none of us get to choose what we are as much as we'd like to. Well, it's normally not so abrupt as to be noticeable, Vita grunts, covering us in a sphere of her essence as a great blast of concentrated power tries to strike us from the sky. It fizzles to nothing before her. It's certainly very different, I agree. But is it worse? A dozen Hiver Rock soldiers dive at us at once, and then their corpses scatter around us as she rips their souls out of the sky. I guess that's a matter of perspective, Vita admits. I smile. She's changed a lot as well, I see. An urge to nestle my face in her hair takes me, but alas I am stopped both by her helmet and my conviction. She needs to work for it this time. It will be good for her. But maybe it won't be as difficult for her as I was expecting. The short-range runic defenses of Hiver Rock are formidable, but they do not stop us as we approach. Less than half a mile to Hiver Rock's open moor, however, Vita freezes with what I can only assume to be terror. What is it? I ask. A queen, is all she seems capable of answering. Her attention, after all, is not with me. The minute twitches of her body indicate her full attention is in analyzing this new threat. I can only imagine what she feels. I've not often seen her this afraid. Well, I muse, it is good then, that I brought a queen of my own. Corrupt leadership is to be replaced, at high priority. Tolerating abuses of power is always a mistake. It's a principle crafted from experience, and it applies strongly here. Though if we actually conquer Hiver Rock, well, I'm not entirely sure what we'll do with it. We'll lose, Vita says with surety. We can't beat this. Is she serious? My talent is built for genocide and she knows it. Arrogance is,
Nothing but a weakness. Yes, okay. Trust Vita's instincts. We can't win against whatever it is she's sensing. But if it just entered her range, it's miles away. How much time do we have? I ask her. She shakes her head. It's hard to say. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 30? I nod. Well, then. 5 minutes will have to be enough. We will inflict whatever damage we can and retreat. If we do not at least buy ourselves time, Skyhope will eventually fall to Vrithitso without them having to do more than continue to drop eggs. Then. We want to go for their world shakers, Vita says, thinking deeply. Pardon? I ask, as I've never heard the term. Huge Vrithitso that they use as breeding females, Vita explains. They lay clutches of hundreds of eggs at once. If we kill enough of those, we'll buy ourselves, I dunno, maybe a year or two while they grow more up to that size. You will navigate us to them, I order her. Of course, she agrees without argument. The most powerful runic defenses so far flare to life, and for a single moment I gaze at them in awe. The spell before me transcends much of what I know about magic. It is elegant and efficient and deadly in ways that must be a century of optimization ahead of us. It is truly beautiful. Fortunately, I have brought along a lot of raw, brute force. Galdra's flame melts the stone holding the runes as Vita's mana consumes the gorgeous working, and moments later we fly up through a hole in the bottom of the island and end up inside, thousands of angry workers in every direction. We made it. We're in Hiver Rock. It's time to start spreading pesticides.